Hi, and welcome to another vlog that you guessed it, I've been writing, and it's gonna be heavily writing focused. Now, I have actually managed to get through a lot of my other manuscript, and it's only beautifying it now, really just cleaning up the draft and beautifying. So it's really at the editing phase only. So in that case scenario, I decided that I'm happy to take on a new slow burner project. So I think I'll take you with me on a journey of making that project. Now, before this, my slow burner project was a middle grade, but I was very disheartened with middle grades recently and decided to put it away and not write. Like, I don't think I'm going to be in the mood to write a middle grade right now. In terms of the project I'm working on, it's completely new idea, but I haven't really like wait for a really long time or anything, so it might change. But I know it's really difficult to give any details out in that early of a stage, especially when like intellectual property is really hard to protect these days. But I thought it would be nice to just have fun and just imagine that it's a fun project and we just have fun together, really. Now, this is particular decision after I had a project called Enchanted on a basically a shop that is a enchanted desserts, really, that was selling enchanted desserts, and it's on a witch that sort of enchanted a person and sort of a romantasy story. I kept this on the side for a long time, hoping that I'm going to rework it and it's going to be worth it. I did a lot of research for the desserts in that, in sort of dessert history for that particular plot. I opened every chapter with a particular dessert and whatnot. I decided to scrap it, and there's certain points why, and one of them is because I can't write romance very well, and it ended up with a bad ending. So I decided to scrap the plot, and I think of maybe grabbing some sort of descriptions of a coffee shop, dessert history, and everything else as I did for that work for that coffee shop. And at that way, I get to reuse that and still feel make something that I'm comfortable with. I come from the time when jump point was something that makes a creator to start a story, could be a memory or some sort of item, even. Now I don't find that definition existent anymore, but as something to consider as you start a new story. Why did you start it? Is there something that you like and you just want to write something similar? Is it something that happened that triggered it? Is like a trigger or a spark? Blurb that I just gonna keep in mind that it's definitely gonna be different. But the first blurb of jumping point, let's say, will be uh, use before coffee gets cold, but make it occult. So the goal is to make this about a cult cafe or coffee shop. And it's not really fun to make. I'm really just thinking about fun, thinking about something different, thinking about larger projects, about reusing the information I've worked with before. For my previous novel, and it's very inefficient way to do it, I planned each chapter right before, from the beginning of drafting and making the table. I planned the colors of each chapter, so like a palette that it has to go through. Which I hope not to get into the same hole because it wasn't really efficient. It wasn't really useful for me going forward necessarily, but it did help me to get the cleaner view. So it was helpful to some degree. I made a playlist for each chapter, and it was also helpful to guide and imagine in my head, like almost like a movie when you know that the track plays on, either going to be in the very sensitive place of that movie or that series, let's say, or
like in the beginning, as you know, when the episode starts and then the music usually comes at the end. So I had that sort of sense of the music come in or not, and the vibe. So would be different reasons why I choose particular songs. Will be hard. I'm not a musical person. Usually, music is not something I go to very often. There's only a few novels that I wrote with music, including the last one. So it will be harder for me to make that playlist. So these sort of things that you just bring yourself into the atmosphere, in the sheer feel of it.
Since I already done quite a bit of a research, I didn't need to look into like historical research right now. So I was just browsing Pinterest and picking any images that could trigger new jump points. Since nothing is really ready for this novel. I also picked up a random art book thinking maybe I'll find something autumnal that I can just display in my home anyway. But this artist was very, very interesting. She did a challenge for a year just trying to get into like storytelling and the atmosphere. So every day painting something, even if it's very rough, it was very inspiring and brought me back to wanting to paint. To look at every single thing you do, even if it's rough, as your creative library that you can like pick up from later. So that's part of what research is for me, even if it's just a drawing that can become some part of a story later. I also recently purchased Mizuki Shigeru's Dictionary of Yokai, which I believe only exists in French, and I don't read French, but it was just so familiar to me. Um, I can't really ever get tired of writing about spirits. If you read several of my works, you'll find there's always some sort of spirits there. I'm also considering that the story will be heavily related to ghosts. So I think this book will be my inspiration for a few works ahead. I finally feel brave enough to try and base a novel in London. Uh, I'm going with a simple setting of alternative modern reality as well as a fake London because I just can't orientate myself well in any location. It's probably not going to match accurately, but it's something I would like to challenge myself with.
Now, given the setting and atmosphere that we're talking on today, I won't need to world build. I won't need to make my own worlds. That last one, Project Amber, I needed to make each of the faculties, how we look, what the function is, every floor. I did like architectural sort of micro schemes for that. But this one is really like much more freer.
I decided to give it a go and draw layout of the coffee shop anyway. I don't know if that would be precise, but I wanted to make it small, just a few tables there and there. Lots of like sort of storage and books and all that, some plants that are all withered because it's autumn. Thought out where it would be like utility rooms and all that because our characters need to live. There's also a bed because one of the characters will be just basically living there. um I put a little raven on top of the coffee shop because the ravens, I think, gonna be a big part of the story. In either way, I just had fun with it, really, not overthinking too much, but having some sort of example. Oh, next to cafe, I also put like a symbol of a hand because I felt like a lot of readings or ghost contact will happen through hands anyway. Yeah, and this is the first time in a while to try to use like foil, and clearly it took me a few tries to get it properly, but yeah, I had fun. Now, one other thing about settings, and I wanted to include this example to think about your setting as a living beast, as a living character, that, unmentionable character, because it also takes the toll as the things progress.
If you destroy a building, it has to stay destroyed and whatnot. But what especially made me think about this setting being a character was a show called Scavenger's Reign, where the planet has its own life regardless what else is happening to the characters. And definitely check it out to know what I mean. We also gonna go with coffee shop, and of course, it's gonna be a lot of cakes. The specific thing about velvet cake that is like was considered like devil's food, so I really wanted to include it. Um, and another thing, I think this particular setting, this particular story would probably fit much more in the autumn than other parts of the year. I decided to go ahead and make a red velvet inspired cupcakes using cocoa powder and red dye. If I rapidly start gaining extra weight, I might actually stop writing it. In last manuscript, I started drawing my characters and made them like files of school and whatnot. I shared a little bit of them. I'm still continuing to do that. And I thought it was really nice to get into the mood, as well as making the sheet of each character with more details to myself and the audience, of course, because you don't want to ruin the plot. There's a lot to say about characters. I will definitely need to make a separate episode about it. Picked three characters that at the moment I know. One of them will be failed necromancer.
I'm also currently started upon a frosted star, and I thought the voice was very beautiful. It sort of borders on the purple prose, and I saw that not all the reviews are very nice, but I think the beginning was sort of like very like the sense of very lavish party of 1920s. You get that sort of feeling, and there was, I think, some Scotch Fitzgerald's like quotes and whatnot. So I think it does achieve that feeling to it.
This is sort of summarizes the beginning of it, the setting, and what sort of aspects of the setting to consider. In the question of when and where is actually a little bit more wide, especially if you're doing the fantasy. As I mentioned, you have your world building. This is where you have your research if you're writing historical novel. So it's actually going to be quite a big chunk of your decision. I decided to go with like very small cast, very narrow spaces. So it's gonna be one of these sort of projects that shouldn't burn a lot of my capabilities in that sense. The time frame that I mentioned, you decide on the season, decide how long the novel will span through. These are very simple things that you should definitely know before you start, but you should decide on the narrative voice, because otherwise you're going to end up rewriting entire script if you haven't quite decided or changed your mind. It is much more educational than my usual videos. And I don't think I plan to make any other sort of workshops or anything of that sort. So I'm very thankful for anyone who stuck around and joined me through this process. The best thing that I mentioned is picking everything like a resource gallery in your head. As you need it, you can just borrow them. That's like the best advice for any creator. Anyway, thank you for being here, and I'll definitely do a different type of video next time. This is what I'm going to be working on for a little while, probably several years, but yeah, but I think it's probably going to be fun. Do support me and stay around. Don't get discouraged by lots of talking I did. I'll see you next time. Bye.